While it is talking season, and right now the pinnacle or the climax of talking season, and no one does it better or bigger, at least, than the SEC. They just can't stay in their own league and not pick on somebody on the West Coast. We will talk about that. Welcome into Trojan Conquest, live right here at the Voice of College Football, your destination every Monday night at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific, where it counts. Matt Zemek's right next to me, as well as Tim Prangley. You can catch their work on a regular basis here, and of course at Trojans Wire Daily. Matt, Tim, how you doing?
Doing well.
Yeah, doing phenomenal. Again, I have the summer off, so I'm enjoying the beach, fishing, all kinds of fun stuff. So we'll see when football season starts and everything starts cranking up. Enjoy it while you can, you guys.
You see those countdowns all over the place in regards to how many days are left until, whether that's week 0 or if people are counting week 1, whatever their countdown to. But of course, unique to USC is the countdown to a Monday night. So since we get together on a Monday night, it's on an even week number here. So I am guessing, I believe we're at 6 weeks. That would be times 7, 42 days, exactly 6 weeks from tonight. USC and LSU get together. And one other connection between USC and SEC Media Days would be that LSU hit the podium today with one Brian Kelly. I took that in. Check out our SEC Live Media Days coverage on the main channel. But one thing in particular, the only thing I heard related to USC, just that Brian Kelly enjoys these kind of games. He said he's going to find out sooner than in other seasons what his team has, what they're going to show him against a quality opponent in week 1. And of course, the same holds for the Trojans.
Matt, you want me to go? I can go.
Well, just, no bulletin board material, but there were some interesting news nuggets, and we can hit them later in the show. But Tim, you can have at it right now.
Well, just as far as the early season goes, I think there's a lot of the bigger name teams this year squaring off. It'll be nice to see, as opposed to some previous years where you don't really have a good find. Like, for instance, USC's been starting off with cupcakes, and then the fan base gets all excited that we're going to take on the universe, when we're playing the lesser competition. And then the reality, like last year, when you start to hit the second half of your schedule and you start playing the tougher teams on your schedule, reality begins to set in. This year, we should have a pretty good idea of where USC is after week 1.
I'll make another Kevin Bacon connection here, about 3 or 4 degrees, maybe not 7. Unfortunate news coming out of the college football world today. Jeff Tedford having to step aside as head coach at Fresno State. Of course, he's had physical ailments and issues in the past, and this is forcing him apparently out of coaching for good at the age of 62. Highly successful coach, had 2 excellent stints at Fresno State, the most recent 19 wins in 2 seasons there, 19-8 record. And of course, by extension there, of course, USC's got a date against Michigan. We will see Michigan tee it up against Fresno State in week 1, and they will have to do so without one of the best coaches in college football.
I'll never forget. I mean, those Tedford Cal teams, really did test Pete Carroll. Tedford's offenses just came to play, and if you're in for a treat, either if you're up in Strawberry Canyon for the game SC lost, was it double overtime or triple? I can't remember, triple or double overtime. Crazy stuff happening with with extra field goals and fumbles and just a wild ending to that game. Or if you were able to watch just the year when you had Aaron Rodgers come in and put on an absolute clinic, I believe setting a Pac-12 record for completions in that game in a row, and then coming down to, the loudest I've ever heard the calls. I've been there for the 96 Notre Dame, but that game against Cal with Aaron Rodgers and that basically, I'm not calling it a goal line stand, but inside the 10-yard line stand that USC put up to preserve that win and go on to win a national championship is one of the louder moments I've ever even come close to feeling in the Coliseum.
And I think one thing to say about Jeff Tedford, just on a general level, there are parallels with Kalen DeBoer in terms of Jeff Tedford as a coach. And the central parallel is, aggressive offense, good teacher of the passing game. Like, he understood the mechanics and the architecture of what made good quarterback play, what made a successful downfield passing offense, and yet his teams were physical. And a lot of times teams that emphasize a downfield passing game, they're also very finesse oriented. But Tedford, like DeBoer, he was able to marry physical play with vertical passing and really understanding structurally the passing game. Not many coaches are able to pull off that combination. That's what I think of when I think of Jeff Tedford, because his Cal teams were physical. That 2004 game against USC was an absolute slugfest. The 2003 game that Tim alluded to, like, that was a high scoring game. That was a fun game. It was a shootout. But the other games that Tedford had against Pete Carroll's USC teams, they were more defense oriented. They were not shootouts. 2004 was not a shootout. And then in 2006, when USC beat Cal to clinch the Pac-10 championship, go to the Rose Bowl, that was a 23-9 game. It was a game in which USC's offense did not really thrive. It was more of a defense-first game. It was a smash mouth game. Like, it was not for the faint of heart. So it's interesting. Like, Tedford is remembered as a teacher of the passing game, but his Cal defenses actually did pretty respectably against USC's offenses. So it's just fascinating how Jeff Tedford was able to pull off being a teacher of the passing game and yet also creating teams that were very physical. Not many coaches are able to do that.
Yeah, I didn't want to gloss over that. I mean, Echimandu and who was it? And you have the guy who played in Seattle. I'm blanking on his name. Big Bad. Marshawn Lynch. So I mean, it wasn't like it was a finesse passing game with Rodgers, throwing. I totally agree with you. They could. That's what made those teams so damn difficult is they could hurt you through the air. They could pound it right down your throat. So yeah, and then there was a Gerard Cherry. Is that right? I'm trying to go way back in the defenders and the safeties and stuff they had. They had some. God, what was his name? It was Cherry though. I can't remember. Anyway, their linebackers and safeties back in the day were also pretty damn nasty. So I do remember. I mean, I remember Slugfest too, but the two games that really just stick out to me when I think of Tedford were those two games. The one up in Strawberry Canyon, and then the one that with the following year, the revenge year, when they came in here with Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers just showed kind of. I mean, in the Pac-12 we knew who he was, but I mean, he really that day came out on a national level and showed people that the guy he was going to be for the rest of his career.
Of course, Tony Gonzalez on offense and Justin Forsett come to mind, in addition to Marshawn Lynch. And we could talk about some others. Deshaun Jackson wasn't too bad himself. One of the quickest players I've ever seen on a football field. Absolutely. Appreciate you all being here. Trojan Conquest Live. Leave those comments and questions there in the chat. We appreciate your contributions in any way possible. The Super Chat's available. We also have the Amazon links in the description section. So when you shop on Amazon, please use the link. I'm telling you, it's the same shopping experience. It's completely transparent to you and does not cost you a penny. Join Tim and Matt on Friday nights for the call-in show. Of course, you get the first word and you produce the show on Fridays with Tim and with Matt at 7 p.m. Pacific time. All right, let's get to the latest in regards to bolstering the roster for 2025. No one ever said that Lincoln Riley could not sign wide receivers. They've got one out of Houston, Texas, and Tanook Hines, who's the 35th rated wide receiver. I know Tim is married to those rankings, so he wants to make sure I get those rankings out. And Tim, get this, the 42nd ranked player in the state of Texas. So mark that down. I know that's very important to you.
42 is a great number. There's also 42 offers this young man got, including schools, some little schools like Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, who else? LSU, Miami, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. So, I mean, yeah, they're really good at what they do over at those places. But I tend to, when you see Georgia coming in with a late offer in May, and these schools realizing a guy that has 10.45 speed with football skills, well, you know, that's probably someone you want on your team. I mean, that's elite. And I think he's about 6 feet tall, but he plays a hell of a lot bigger than that for a guy his size. And remember, this guy's only what, 16, 17, 18, whatever years old. He's going to get into a college program in the weight rooms and a nutrition program, and is going to get better. And if he gets a little bit of more size on him, and he can keep that elite track speed and play on the field, you know, in full pads with that kind of speed, that's a weapon that you get. It kind of really pairs well with just what USC likes to do. USC likes to have, you need to have that guy that can really just take the top off the ball. This guy's quick too. I mean, he basically, when you hear that he can play both corner and receiver, that kind of tells you also about the athleticism and the quickness, not just like, you know, just route running, which I hear he's really good at route running. Multiple people have reported he's a great route runner, but when you talk about having those physical tools, you know, the ability to change direction and be crisp, where you can be legitimately talked to about a two-way player, either quarterback or safety, that just takes you to a different level when you couple it with that speed. You know, I'm really glad because, you know, what was it? A couple of weeks ago, we got Corey Sims, not a burner, but a big guy that plays and plays physical and gives those tough catches. And then now you complement with somebody like Hines, who's a guy who's going to get out there. He's going to get out of breaks. He'll get you those quick, you know, third down plays, but you could also take the top off of a defense. And, you know, that's what I like to see. Is one thing I'm not going to question again will be when it comes to quarterback, if 247 and on 3 want to drop, you know, a star quarterback they thought was the greatest thing since sliced bread, all of a sudden, now he's a 4-star, not a 5-star. They dropped him like from the number 1 quarterback in the 2006 class down to like the number 7 quarterback in the 2005 class. I'm never going to get caught up in all that crap. I'm really not. I watched him throw at Elite 11, and he brought in the highest score. He threw a 50. You know, that tied the record was set by your guy CJ a couple years ago. So I mean, it's not like these rankings are the end all be all. If he's 42 in the state of Texas, but the names I just named for you, the receiver rooms want this guy, I'm going to take their evaluation over what I'm sure, and they do. Rivals and On 3 and 247. These guys do a great job, but I'm going with the college coaches over their analysis, to be honest with you.
My reaction to USC getting another wide receiver is that Lincoln Riley is basically like an Italian grandmother. And what I mean by that is I can imagine, you know, at an Italian restaurant, Julian Lewis is there with a knife and fork. He's wearing a bib, and Lincoln Riley is the Italian grandmother. You want another wide receiver? I'm going to give you another wide receiver. Like Lincoln Riley's making sure that Julian Lewis is well fed, that he's well stocked, that he has all the weapons, all the toys at the store. Like, let me give you some more, you know? So he's making sure that Julian Lewis is really well fed, that he's not going under-resourced. Like that to me is really the news story, because like it's not as though USC needs wide receivers more than anything, but a way to make sure that Julian Lewis is happy, that Julian Lewis doesn't jump. Here's another spicy meatball. I mean, here's another wide receiver. You know, make sure you grow up big and strong. So it's Lincoln Riley feeding Julian Lewis, making sure his big boy is well taken care of. Like that really to me is the main story in all this.
And you do have to worry about the fact that you're going to have a lot of USC's receiving core. They don't have a lot of eligibility left, so they do need to stock up in this 2025 class. They are going to need those numbers, and like you just astutely brought up, the Julian Lewis factor is going to be one that, you know, I mean, why wouldn't you want him to go and play for a quarterback that is just pinpoint accurate with the ball and just gets the ball out to where it needs to be? So, and then also playing for Lincoln Riley and Lincoln Riley's system. I don't think they have trouble. There's certain schools that don't have trouble selling wide receiver to the country, right? You know, Ohio State's one of them, USC's another. You're always going to have great athletes, and both schools just year in, year out crank guys into the NFL. And if you look at the guys in the NFL from USC, they're all doing very well that they're in the NFL as well, not just when they did at USC. So that proven production and the ability to get you not just to the league, but also get you ready to excel in the league. I would have to say to you, though, I think guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Drake London, they were going to succeed no matter what you did. I mean, that was pretty much inside them. But you really do have that track record. And like we try to say to people, NIL's big, but these truly elite athletes are thinking about the next level. That's the first thing they think about.
So, you know, having established that, okay, Julian Lewis is being well taken care of, that he's being well fed with more and more wide receivers, we also have to say, all right, Lincoln, like, we get it. You can recruit the skill positions. Give us some defensive linemen. You know, we need to beef things up. We need to get more reinforcements up front. I mean, like, I'm not going to complain about wide receivers, but, like, it's not the target group. Like, it's not the position of acute need. Like, now we need to get line play, and being realistic, you know, USC just needs to show its toughness in this upcoming 24 season. And if Coach Henne can woof, you know, really drastically improve the performance of the defensive line, then maybe in December, you know, later in this cycle, we will see things change for USC in terms of defensive line reinforcements in the 2025 class.
2 offensive linemen, 2 defensive linemen thus far. So on the defensive side, of course, Hayden Lowe, the 4th-rated player in the class. And then we also had Gus Cordova come in here in March. 2 along the defensive front, Matt. What is typically trying to think what the formula is in regards to that. You know, there's a fairly well set formula that isn't as important now as it used to be because of the transfer portal in terms of how many offensive linemen you need, how many defensive linemen, how many quarterbacks. Should only be 1 quarterback basically per class. And then there's a formula there to a certain extent that you adhere to. But I got to think with 25 signed typically in a class that you need about 4 defensive linemen. And so they're about halfway there. Would be my thought there.
Just the reality that a couple have decommitted. Well, you need to compensate for those losses and make gains elsewhere.
So folks, while you get the intellect and the writing ability and the communication skills from Matt, of course, every day on Trojan's Wire, you only get the accent here. You only get the flav here. So you gotta be here on Monday and Friday for that. Absolutely.
The issue is going to be on the D line. Is the 2 guys they have on the D line are guys like Matt said, they need that interior stuff, and both guys, you know, Cordova and Lowe, those guys are studs, but they're more on the outside. USC is a bit low. They're going to lose, you know, most likely Bear Alexander is gone. And they lost a couple of guys after spring ball this year. So they're really light on the interior defensive line. They're going to need to get, I would say, 3-4 guys, whether it's right now or in the portal going forward, because they were light going in and then they lost 2 guys. So they're even lighter. And then when you're going to lose, like I said, a Nate Clifton who might kind of slide inside for SC, a Bear Alexander, who knows with a great year what Lucas, what his situation might be if he slides inside as well. You're going to lose a lot of those bigger guys, so they're going to need to reload big.
I have long since said, since they opened for business back in 1995 with do you guys remember this name? Kenny Hill torching South Carolina, the Texas A&M quarterback, for over 500 yards. That was actually the fall of 2014, August of 2014. That was the first SEC network game. And they've done a remarkable job in terms of stocking that network to make it look first class. However, I will say for the production that they put on for SEC Media Days, I monitor that pretty closely and watch just about everything every year. They tend to go off the rails in their national coverage. They need to stick to the lane and stay in their lane covering the SEC, because they tend to wander about and hit some points here, as DML has pointed out as well. So we're getting right there, DML. We appreciate the contribution, sir. Paul Finebaum is truly a clown. His hate is sickening. How could you disrespect another person that bad on live television when plenty of SEC programs are bad? Perfect segue, DML. Perfect segue. Let me get to some of the comments here from Finebaum on SEC Media Days today. So again, why they needed to talk about Lincoln Riley, I don't know, but here they go. We will just stick to the quotes. Quote, I think he's been a disaster. Okay, quote, let's go back 3 years. Oklahoma and Texas joining the SEC. What did Lincoln Riley do? He ran away. He did not want to deal with the Southeastern Conference at OU. He took what he thought was an easier course. So he goes out to Southern Cal. He takes Caleb Williams. Good for a year, but since then, everything has gone wrong. Speaking about it as though there was one good year and then like 6 bad years. Okay. Everything since has gone wrong. Okay, next quote. I thought last year was one of the worst coaching jobs I've ever seen. Good Lord. Next quote. If I had been the athletic director at Southern Cal, I would have fired Lincoln Riley because he has yet to show, after many years as a head coach, he knows about defense. He's gone through defensive coordinators. He just simply couldn't handle it. Next quote. Now things are going to be 5 times worse in the Big Ten. That could be slightly overstated. On top of that, a number of his top players are bailing out. Final quote here. This is a guy who owned LA for about a half a minute. And quite frankly, next year at this time, I think he'll more than likely be an assistant in the NFL if he's that lucky, end quote.
So much to choose from. The 2 things that I would emphasize. One, the quote, he's gone through defensive coordinators. But hello, his problem is that he hasn't gone through defensive coordinators, that he's stuck with one coordinator way too long. So like, that's a big error right there. But the other thing, and like, I'm not gonna write about this now because frankly, people aren't reading Trojans Wire all that much. I gotta save my really good stuff for when, closer to the season, when more readers are reading my stuff. So I'm gonna save it for the print side for August. But I can say this right now on the Voice of College Football, is that we need to have a Brent Venables conversation. If we are going to have a Lincoln Riley conversation at USC, we need to have a Brent Venables conversation at Oklahoma. And Oklahoma fans, like, they are bullish on Venables, and I'm not going to criticize them for that. But what I am going to criticize from Oklahoma fans, since we're on this topic, is that like they are just so upfront in saying, oh, it was so clearly good for Oklahoma football that Lincoln Riley left. All right, I mean, can we just pick that apart for a bit? Lincoln Riley took you to 3 playoffs. Now, did he do that with what Bob Stoops left him in the cupboard? Yes, like, not arguing that, but still 3 straight playoffs, 4 straight Big 12 championships. That's a lot of achievement right there. Brent Venables hasn't yet made a playoff, hasn't yet gotten Oklahoma to the standards that Lincoln Riley achieved. And all the chips are on the middle of the table in terms of Jackson Arnold. Like Brent Venables is betting the farm that Jackson Arnold is going to be the real deal at Oklahoma. And if he's not, what then? So, just from an Oklahoma standpoint, in terms of saying how much better Brent Venables is than Lincoln Riley, all right, could be true, but hasn't yet been proved to be true. And can we at least see Brent Venables hit the ball out of the park one season before we arrive at the point where we say, oh, it's so clearly beneficial for Oklahoma that Lincoln Riley's gone? Can we at least just see Brent Venables hit a moonshot, 450-foot home run on this night of the home run derby? Can we at least see Brent Venables hit one moonshot before we start getting into that territory? So that is part of the Lincoln Riley discourse, is that if Lincoln Riley is so awful for USC, what are we saying about Brent Venables? And has Finebaum, like, I don't pay attention to Finebaum for a reason, But has he said anything about Brent Venables at Oklahoma? Nothing that I'm aware of. And if that is the case, now maybe he has said something about Venables, but if he hasn't, if he has not been forcefully critical of Venables, or has at least said, you know what, this is a prove-it year for Venables, if Finebaum has not applied that level of scrutiny, like that is just very disingenuous and playing double standards relative to Lincoln Riley and USC.
I mean, am I the only one that remembers Oklahoma going to every big bowl and getting their ass kicked? Am I? Because I mean, I keep hearing how there's no doubt that Bob Stoops had a very consistent career at Oklahoma. I love Bob Stoops, but the year that it was broken, it was freaking broken. He had his brothers at DC. He just fired. He couldn't get it going on offense, and they lost 5 games. They bring in this young guy to be their OC. And they turn it around. And I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a one-off. So I guess you're allowed to lose 5 games if you're Bob Stoops, and you have years and years and years of track record behind you, not just 6 years or 5 years like Riley had. But Riley came in there. I keep hearing how Bob Stoops just set the table for him. I think that Oklahoma was struggling, and I think injecting Lincoln Riley in there, because really the only thing that was working for Oklahoma during those later Bob Stoops years wasn't their defense, Mark. It wasn't their defense. They were not winning with defense.
I agree with you to a certain extent, Tim, but I'm going to bring you back a little bit to the center. That Bob Stoops' final team went 11-2. They won a Big 12 championships. They won the Sugar Bowl.
Right, but I mean, who was his OC, and how'd they win? Did they win those with a defense, or did they win it with an offense run by Lincoln Riley, who was killing it?
Sure. And
there's a reason why Bob Stoops stepped down, because he loved Oklahoma, and they didn't want to lose a young guy he felt that Bob Stoops felt would be an excellent coach for Oklahoma, the Oklahoma that he loved. And that was clear. I mean, crystal clear. And so he steps aside. He still has some years of coaching in him, because they didn't want to lose, because Riley was going to go somewhere else. He wasn't going to sit there and be the OC at Oklahoma. He was going to go off and get a head coaching job. And Stoops, being the Oklahoma man that he is, and I have mad respect for Bob Stoops. Don't ever get this twisted. He was one of the few guys that when the whole thing came out about vacating, he's like, I watched that game. I know who won that game. I mean, he got my instant respect from then on. But to sit back and make it seem like Lincoln Riley was handed the keys to a Ferrari and it was rolling, and he just gravy trained it, that's the narrative. I mean, these narratives just get played out so much to me, and I hear them over and over and over again. Again, 5 losses the year before Riley got there. He comes in, cranks up the offense. They turn around a couple of years, and then they're rolling. I mean, that's the real narrative of it. He never got he started out with Mike Stoops, who he inherited, and then he made a poor choice with Grinch, and he hung on way too long. But like you said, Matt, it's not like he has a history of bad hires. He had one bad hire. And the thing that's really interesting about Finebaum to me is, did they talk anything about the new defense? Finebaum makes it sound like nothing changed at USC. You know, that's just goes to this narrative. And quite frankly, you know what this is all about? This isn't even about USC. This is about Finebaum. The man is like, he probably, I don't know the numbers, but there's other people in that space that have eclipsed him. He was the big dude. He was the SEC guy over at ESPN. Now I don't watch ESPN. Who's the guy? Pat McAfee, right? He's a new hotshot guy, taking a lot of thunder out of his stuff. You know, you got people on the internet. You got a Josh Pate, who's a big, who does a lot in this SEC space now. Finebaum's just trying to get clicks, man. The guy's irrelevant. The guy's just bordering on an old, angry, irrelevant dude, and he's just trying to get some clicks. And so he comes out with these outrageous comments, because what's the lowest hanging fruit in the world? Take a shot at USC, and by God, take a shot at Lincoln Riley, because you're instantly going to have about 4 or 5 fan bases jumping on board and getting excited about it. So I don't think as much had to do with USC or Lincoln Riley as it is ESPN and Paul Finebaum realizing they're quickly becoming a dinosaur.
My general take on Paul Finebaum is somewhat close to Tim's. this is what I know about Paul Finebaum is he made a national name for himself as a local SEC guy, and he stirred up a lot of people. He would make some radical takes and outlandish takes, and he made a name for himself. And he was a big personality on radio in the South and in Alabama for a long time, and then he broke onto the national scene. And of course, ESPN was looking for regional SEC flavor, and they grabbed the guy that was most popular on the radio in that region. And basically, I watched his show for a long time on the SEC network, and he basically just lets the callers be the entertainment of the show, and he just kind of kicks back and he provides very little analysis. But when he does exactly that. He wants to make a big splash about once a month and dive in. But day to day, it's just basically him sitting there listening to callers just going and then making like 3-word replies, and then he just moves on to the next caller. Now, the thing that I've learned from Paul Finebaum in listening to him enough is he knows extremely little about what's going on the football field. He does not major on dissecting the game, watching the game, understanding the game. He doesn't understand what's going on outside the SEC. He uses a broad brush and very general narratives about what's going on outside the SEC. What he does know is he's built a lot of contacts and relationships. He understands the sport from a macro level in terms of the structure of the sport, how it works, the power of ADs, the power of presidents, the coaching profession. He understands all that. That's what he knows, and that's an important aspect of that. He doesn't understand football and doesn't know football, doesn't know the personnel that's in the game either. Those are his strengths and weaknesses from my perspective.
I'm not going to disagree with you. I mean, I remember you bringing that up a long time ago, and then after you did, whenever I did see him, I don't watch his call-in show. I mean, I bless you if you can watch that show, but I can't watch that for 10 minutes. But it just seems like that this is the perfect example of what all three of us are talking about, and half of the chat, in the fact that he's just farming. You know, he's just engagement farming with his mouth is all he's doing. He just wants people to hop on. He wants to say something really controversial, you know. Instantly, I mean, I could say, all I have to say is Brett Venables, and there's like 4 or 5 people. We appreciate you being here, Oklahoma. And all you got to say is Brett Venables, and they're like, oh, leader of men. Oh, wow, you know, all the catchphrases. Well, let's do some leader of wins, and then we can talk about it. It will be exciting. I think he's a great defensive. Talk about somebody who's a really good coordinator and hasn't proven that he's a head coach. That would be where is Finebaum on Venables? That's what I would say. And you know, I hear it a lot from the Oklahoma people. Well, Lincoln's a really good coordinator, but he's not much of a head coach. You know, it's only been 2 years, but Lincoln's only had 7. I mean, it's not like just leaps and bounds difference. I mean, the guy is only 40 years old, you know? So when we start jumping to the fact that he's this and this guy's that, and the worst I've ever seen after sitting there and watching the meltdown, USC Jay brought up really he has a video on the same topic. You know, he's right there a front row seat for what's happened to A&M over 2 coaches. Sumlin and oh my God,
Jimbo Fisher.
Jimbo, right? I mean, he's had front row seats out. He's saying this is the worst coaching job he's ever seen. I mean, come on, it's just absurd. He can't be that stupid or that obtuse.
One down season, and it was not atrocious. I know USC fans do not want to see 8-5. I do not consider the season to be atrocious. It was an 8-5 season. And again, what he did at Oklahoma can be criticized at the very highest level, but he was extremely good at Oklahoma, at the very least a B or B plus performance, and possibly better than that at Oklahoma. They went 55-10. They owned the Big 12.
Want to touch on one thing in light of what you just said, Mark. You know, Lincoln Riley's results, over the course of his full head coaching career, dating back to 2017, are elite. They are clearly elite results. And some people in the chat, when we talked about Bob Stoops as part of the Brent Venables, Lincoln Riley story at Oklahoma, some people in the chat said Bob Stoops was not elite. So here's the thing. Bob Stoops was elite. Lincoln Riley has been elite as a whole. Like, and being elite doesn't mean like you won't have a bad season. Bo Schembechler had a bad season or two. Nick Saban had a bad season, 2007. You know, like every great coach has stepped in a pothole once or twice. Jim Harbaugh has, Urban Meyer has. Like, having one really, really bad season when it flies off the rails, that doesn't mean you cease to be an elite coach. It means you had a bad year. But like Lincoln Riley, 2017 through 2022, he did not lose more than 2 games in any of those 6 regular seasons. Like, that's elite performance. So one bad year does not mean you cease to be elite. Now, if you have 4 bad years, okay, different conversation. But the idea that you're not elite because you have a bad year or because you lose in playoff semifinals or playoff title games, look, the cream of the crop, like the heavyweights, the icons, the legends, okay, the Sabans, the Kirbys, the Dabos, you know, the guys who win national championships, they are elite at the highest level. But there's elite at the highest level, and then there's elite at a secondary level. Elite is not just the person who wins the national title. You know, in college basketball, if you make 3 or 4 Final Fours in a 10-year period, like, that's elite, okay? Might not have won the national title, that's elite. In baseball, if you make, like the Houston Astros have won 2 World Series in the past 7 years, but they've made the ALCS each of the last 7 years. Like, that's elite. Even though they haven't won the championship most of the time, like, come on, you have to call the Astros as a whole, and I know Dodger fans hate this, but you have to call the Astros an elite Major League Baseball team in general. Doesn't mean that you win the title most of the time. It means you're always in that top tier, top 3, top 4. That's Lincoln Riley.
Matt,
that's
you don't
Bob
have to tell Dodger fans that, by the way. But Matt, you don't have to tell Dodger fans that.
This notion that elite is only if you win the national title or only if you win the national title 2 or 3 times. No, elite is being in the top tier of your sport, of your profession. We need to
couple things. Well, then why is it only applied to certain people like Bob Stoops? Again, I know you're not. I'm not complaining with either one of you guys. I'm saying my point I was trying to make up was about the Bob Stoops losing the big game is 2014, right? He stepped down in 2016. He had 3 shots at the playoffs. How many playoff wins did Bob Stoops, when he was rolling and handing it to Lincoln Riley, how many playoff wins did he have?
0.
Right. And outside of 2000, how many major bowl victories did Bob Stoops have? That's not my point. I'm not saying Bob. I think I was really clear. I think Bob Stoops, 17 years, 18 years, he was a coach. Outstanding. 2000 national champion. Outstanding. Always win, consistently in being in the hunt or winning the Big 12. Amazing. There's nothing wrong with Bob Stoops. I'm trying to show, when people make this comparison, well, but Riley hasn't won a playoff game, so therefore he's not elite. That is something, you guys on this panel, that is brought up all the damn time. If you hold that same standard, Bob Stoops is an elite either then. So I'll take that argument.
He won a national championship.
He won a national championship, year 2, year 3, and then he went 15 years.
Yeah, he only got.
And then he went 15 years without that kind of success.
Yeah, but he didn't get to experience the entire playoff era. So let me get to a point that Tim will like, because I think it is reasonable. USC was a disaster the season before Lincoln Riley. And of course, USC was much better the next year for 2 reasons. Personnel, Caleb Williams and others brought in, but also because Lincoln Riley is 50 times better than Clay Helton. And Lincoln Riley knows how to build a winner and knows how to coach games and scheme offenses and do what he did in 2022. And I'm a big believer in the results are what matter. The bottom line results are what matter. However, the reason we're here is to bring context and understanding to those results. And I don't think USC would have been successful in the playoffs in 2022. But they were sitting at 11-1. They were playing a Pac-12 championship game, and they lost the best player in the sport, or he was basically compromised, down to 30% of himself. And there are teams that overcome those situations. Absolutely. Yes, some do, some don't. But it was a a major factor in the Pac-12 championship game. And if Caleb Williams doesn't get hurt and USC somehow wins that game, we will never know what would have happened, but they were certainly outplaying Utah at the time. Then, regardless of what happens, let's say they lose by 20 points in a playoff game to whomever they would have played, the number 1 seed. They would have played Georgia, most likely. Was that 2022, that was the Georgia, Michigan, TCU. Yeah. They might have been the 3 seed. They probably would have been the 3 seed because Michigan
played Michigan in the Fiesta.
Played Michigan. So I don't think they would have gotten rolled by Michigan. You know, maybe they lose a 10-point game. It's a respectable loss. It's a much different look nationally. And then shoot, they come down to 8-5, and maybe they don't go 8-5 this next season with coming off of that 2022 season as a playoff team and a Pac-12 champion.
Someone asked in the chat, is Brian Kelly an elite head coach? Yes.
We all have our own definitions of elite. He goes in that same category. If you were saying that some guys that get you to the Final Four, but then get there and be shown that he probably didn't belong to be there, then the answer would be yes, if you say that's elite. Brian Kelly has been to some playoffs, right? He was at the BCF championship game, got the doors knocked off of him. Clearly was not the second best team in the country. He was a great, consistent coach that every 3 to 4 years would have it. And one thing Brian Kelly has always done and has done again at LSU is every 3 to 4 years will have an amazing offensive line. And that offensive line will drive his team to a 10, 11, 12 win season. But Brian Kelly, again, at some point, you guys, and I just want to differ from you guys on the panel. Elite coaches get you home, get you there. They're not the bridesmaid. They're not always showing up saying, hey, folks, we got here. You know what? We're one of the best. The elite coaches are like a Pete Carroll, like a Nick Saban, like a Kirby Smart, that are always there and then win and dominate and in dominant fashion show you this is absolutely the best team in the country.
So just to clarify, Tim, Lincoln Riley is not an elite coach in your estimation.
He has not shown he's who would say he's elite? It depends on your definition.
I'm just
hang on.
You're based on your definition.
I want to clarify. At this point, he's not.
Okay.
But he's only 40. He's only coached 7 years. We'll come back in 20 years. We'll
put Ryan Day in the same bucket.
Yeah, Brian Day's not either. But he was a field goal away, but he didn't take it home. So
you could actually make a lot more conditions for Ryan Day than Lincoln Riley because of what you just mentioned. Plus, he's coached a few seasons less. But anyway, so he's not elite. So
talk about taking over a program. But go ahead.
Well, yeah. If you can't win there, I don't know where you're going to win. But anyway, so there are 2 elite coaches in college football right now. Matt Brown gets the lifetime membership for what happened 19 years ago, I guess.
No. See, that's what I'm saying. That's what I said. Bob Stoops won like in year 2 or year 3, right? And then never came back to the mountaintop after that.
Sure.
And it went on for 15 more years and just had very, very good and great teams, but never had that dominant team that just said, we are the best team in the country. In 15 years, he was unable to do that. Those are elite coaches. Elite coaches to me are the guys that take you and have the best team in the country, and everyone goes, yeah.
I'm just clarifying, Tim.
All right.
There are 2 elite coaches because they've won recent national championships, Kirby Smart and Dabo Swinney, and then Mac Brown, whatever you want to do with him. He's got a national championship. Those are the only 3.
Well, no, I don't include Mac Brown there. I don't think just because you win, like if, for instance, if Gus Malzahn, moves his way back up to the Power 5, are we going to call him an elite coach? Because are we doing that? Are we going to say that Ed Ogeron's an elite coach because he has a national champ? No, I'm talking about a coach who's shown that they're good. They're win like a Bob Stoops, like a Lincoln Riley. But then and like a win like a Brian Kelly. But then you go that next level and you dominate the sport for 2 or 3. You have little mini dynasties or dynasties. Those are when I say elite, because how do we mark it up? What's the difference between a John Robinson and a John McKay at USC? What's the difference?
If we go Matt's direction, which I tend to lean a little further in Matt's direction, those are all-time greats. Woody Hayes, Bear Bryant, Pete Carroll, they're all-time greats. John McKay.
They're icons. They're the transcendent guys, but we have to allow for
Pete Carroll.
like in the pyramid of elite. Yes, Pete Carroll is a transcendent. Like no question about it. Home run hitter. But like there are also great at that second tier. An example that Mark
Let's call them great
might identify with. Jackie Sherrill. Jackie Sherrill, elite head coach in his time. Like he spins off 3 or 4 11 win seasons at Pitt. Not an easy thing to do. Not something that's been readily historically replicated there. And then he goes to Texas A&M and wins a bunch of Southwest Conference championships. He smokes a couple really great teams. Notre Dame and Auburn in Cotton Bowls. Like for a decade, he was an elite coach. And he belongs to the College Football Hall of Fame. He's not in there because of the stupid policies. Like you have to have a 600 winning percentage. Yeah, like that's why Pete Carroll's not in the Hall of Fame. But like for a decade, he was as good a coach as anyone in college football. So to me, that's an elite coach. He didn't win national titles, but he was the best in his profession. Like he was one of like the 4 or 5 best coaches in his sport for a decade. But you can do that and not win national championships. So we have to allow for elite in that context, not just the skull crushers, the Sabans, the Kirbys, the Dabos.
I think we're just having a semantical argument. What I call elite, you guys call the all-time greats. What you guys call elite, I call great. I mean, we just have different nomenclature for this stuff. We're all saying the same thing. Like there's this level that's just the top of the crust. I call that elite. You call that the all-time great. There's guys that like have these mini runs, they dominate, but they don't just ever quite get there, or they're good coaches over their career, but they have a great moment. I call those guys great coaches, and then go down from there. We're just calling them different names. I think we're saying the same thing. We're just calling them different names, really.
I don't like it. You hit close to home with Jackie Sherrill. Jackie Sherrill once asked me to speak to his team at Mississippi State in front of the football team. On how to address the media and speak to the media. And it was funny because before he introduced me, he said, because we know you're going to be getting in trouble. And, his program was running amok and he didn't know what his players were out doing, but he just wanted to make sure that they represented themselves well in front of the media. But he was a character, no doubt about that. And he elevated Mississippi State. They had been winning 3 games a year, and he gets there and Mississippi State went to the SEC championship game with Jackie Sherrill.
And like this is the year for Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss to get to Atlanta. Ole Miss never been to Atlanta. This is the year for Ole Miss, the only long-standing SEC West member school to never be in the SEC championship game. So if Lane can't do it this year, when is he ever going to do it? And it does magnify Jackie taking MSU to the title game in that 1998 season against Peerless Price and T. Martin and the rest of those Tennessee Vols.
And they had a lead with about 10 minutes left in that game. So Matt, we'll move on from Jackie Sherrill certainly, but we got our buddy Brad _405. Thank you so much for the contribution, Brad. We appreciate you, Tim. #Boomer Sooner.
Yeah, I'm sure that's dripping with sarcasm, but we appreciate you being here, Brad. And I'll say, listen, there are pictures of me as a little child. Remember my favorite picture of me being really little is I have a Rams helmet on and I've got a Billy Sims t-shirt on. Now that's a Detroit Lions Billy Sims jersey, but I knew about Billy Sims. And so, I mean, people think I hate Oklahoma are completely wrong. I mean, Barry Switzer, that guy, I'm not sure, Mark, you might like the Cowboy part of him. I didn't like that part of him. I was still really into the Rams back then. But I mean,
days. Yeah.
But I will tell you, Barry Switzer as a college football coach, that's an elite guy. If you want to talk about, elite, there's some. So I began to dislike parts of the Oklahoma fan base because of the way they acted after the Lincoln Riley thing. I think it was a really unfair shots and not really good look for a fan base. But overall, again, if you were asking me, in the Big 12, who was my favorite team, even it would have been probably one of two, either Oklahoma State or Oklahoma. Those would have been my two favorite teams in the Big 12. But yeah, recent events changed that quite a bit. But I also know there's a lot of great fans. I've met a number, because a lot of fans call on the call-in show, you guys, and I forget to turn it off. And so I'll get a call like the next day or in the middle afternoon, and it'll be someone calling because it's forwarded through my cell phone. And I've talked to a number of Oklahoma fans, and I mean, they're not happy with Lincoln Riley, but they could hold a conversation. I wish we could hear from more of them. So,
absolutely,
the divorce is final. Let's move on and be friends.
Just want to say, as we thank Brad for the $20 super chat, want to just mention about our Friday show, our most recent Friday show. What Tim and I started to do, we want to mention this for people who weren't watching on Friday. We're doing a new thing where you always get the one full hour. We're always bringing you the same thing that we've always brought to you. But now what we're adding is we give you a second full hour if we raise a certain amount of funds in the first hour. And so we hit our fundraising target on Friday night. So we were on until midnight Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific. We're going to do that again for this Friday, and we'll go for 3 hours if we hit a fundraising target in the first 2 hours of the show. So for people who want more hours of Tim and Matt on Fridays, we're giving it to you. But of course, in exchange for giving you more hours of conversation, more hours of taking phone calls, well, in order for our time to be spent on that show, the extra time to spend on that show, we offer a fundraising opportunity so that we stay on the air for 3 hours. So that's the exchange we're offering on our Friday show at the Voice of College Football. And hopefully by Friday, we will have a Venmo outlet that we can publicize for you. And we can also we also have in the works, other goodies that we're trying to develop. But we have to develop the infrastructure, but we will try to have a thing where we will give you other nice things in exchange for the contributions you make here at the USC channel at the Voice of College Football.
I think we need a woof woof merch shirt for you, Matt, with your face. I would buy it. Like a Matt right here with a woof woof. I personally would buy that shirt. So we got to work on some silk screening for that. And really quickly, Matt, sorry, I was interrupting you, but I could, as a lifelong Dodger fan, I don't feel for the Astros whatsoever. We have been the bridesmaid as a Dodger fan, more than I can even, either if it's the NLCS or if it's the World Series. Believe me, I've felt it. So I know exactly what that's like in baseball. Trust me.
The current and recent Dodgers are a combination of the old Buffalo Bills and the Atlanta Braves of the 90s all smashed together, because it's been a while that the Dodgers just dominate the regular season over and over and over, and then they run into their
pitching trouble
issues. Yes.
Want to say thanks to John and over at the Ocho and the Michigan channel at the Voice of College Football. He's a member of our USC channel. Watched our bonus cut, our choice cut on 1979 USC LSU. So if you're not a member, you want to sign up at the medium or top tiers, you will get our deep dive into the 1979 USC LSU game. USC coming back late to beat LSU in Baton Rouge, 17-12. So Mark and I, that's one of our bonus cuts. That's what you get when you sign on as a member. We recorded 3 different new segments recently. So that is part of what you get when you become a member of the USC channel here at the Voice of College Football. So thank you, John, for that kind note.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. That's a great reminder. 2 more choice cuts from Matt and myself will be posted here in the next several days. That brings the total up to, I believe, 17 choice cuts. So the ones that Matt and I have done in the past, those are not outdated. It's a lot of historical context on USC football, transition to the Big Ten. We take a lot of national topics and relate them to USC, or USC and relate them to the national scene. Great conversations, Matt and myself. They're 20, 30-minute conversations on everything involving USC football from a big level picture.
Okay, one other housekeeping note. Now, Adam Lamparello, tremendous contributor, benefactor, supporter of the show. So in honor of Adam and his immense generosity, rest in peace, Shannon Doherty. It's a profound loss, and certainly people in Southern California feel as the star of 90210. So our sympathies and our condolences on the passing of Shannon Doherty. And that's for you, Adam.
That was sad. That was extremely sad. And there was a clip that was on social media of her last podcast. And I read up quite a bit on her fight against cancer here since, I believe, 2015. And she was extremely eloquent and graceful and classy in that battle. Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys.
I had a joke on deck, but I'll say that for next week because I can't follow that up with the crass joke I was going to have. So we'll go ahead and shelf that one for next week for sure.
We can shelf the brand rankings for next week as well, if you guys would like. I do want to get your take on the brand rankings.
I got a minute if you do, Matt. Yeah, let's hit it real quick.
Here we go. Brand rankings. So these were presented earlier today on the Voice of College Football X account. So this is our official Twitter/X account. There you see my top 25 that actually makes sense. So this was posted earlier today. So let's understand where this is coming from. This was posted by our Nebraska guy. Justin Adams does a great job on the Nebraska channel. Please check him out every Tuesday at 7 Eastern. Did not include Nebraska on the top 10 brands list. That is who is included. Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3, Michigan at 4, 5's Notre Dame, 6 Oklahoma, Georgia at 7, Oregon 8, LSU at 9, and USC at number 10.
Yeah, I mean,
my reaction here is I just hope this is plastered in the USC locker room. that Lincoln Riley and the players can see this. Coaches and teams that ain't done nothing, like Brent Venables hasn't done anything, Dan Lanning hasn't done anything, and yet they're posted ahead of USC. Like someone just needs to copy this, print it, slap it on the locker room, slap it on the practice field, goalposts, whatever. Like this is bulletin board material right there.
Thing is, this isn't about the indictment on the team. To me, this is more of an indictment on the fan base. If you and the program, really, to me. If I'm right on this, Mark, this means like marketability of each program. Is that what this is? Like merchandise and eyeballs? I mean, what is this?
His explanation here is, note, recent success was weighted with overall brand impact. So it's quite vague.
Because here would be my point. If USC is in the top 10, going on the worst, coming off of like a extended decade of being on basically having sanctions against us, having a coach who's coaching the number 3 brand, who was just having a substance abuse program, who seemed to be the right guy, just the wrong part of his life, go through that. And then we have an administration who really just lost the plot. I mean, if anyone wants to speak candidly at USC, this was not all the hate goes towards Clay. Clay gets yelled at, and Helton's burned in effigy. But the fact of the matter is, he's just some dude trying to be the best coach he can. He was enabled by the everyone from the president, the board of trustees, the AD, all the way down. Given an extension at one point, on knee jerk after a Rose Bowl, and yet we're still at 10. We're coming off the worst football we've had, 1950s, 1990s, good portion of it, and then the past 13 years, really the down periods of USC football history. And if we could still be in the top 10 brand in college football, playing the way we have played, imagine when, and I said when, not if, when USC turns this around. Because as much as the haters out there want to say it, USC, all it needs is the right coach with the right administration behind them, and they can play ball with anybody. To be at 10 on this list after what we've seen for the past decade plus is, I think, is a testament to you. I see it as a compliment more than anything else.
Anything else on that, Matt?
Yeah, also got to just point out Georgia at 7. So it's not just a measurement of success.
To me, it's about who moves the needle from a brand standpoint. And I understand my age, so I think more historic. I would rank USC higher because I think more brand. So I'm thinking about who is recognizable, who moves television ratings, who is a brand that people recognize, the logo, the name. And you guys have run across people that know nothing about college football and have no idea that USC just went 5-7 the year before. But you say USC and it's oh yeah, college football, USC versus Oregon. Okay. Well, but if you're in the current recency of Oregon's brand, the uniforms, Nike, they've been hot, they've been chic. Yeah, I don't think they're necessarily displaced, but I would rank USC above Oregon. I don't have a huge issue with these rankings. And I usually, when we post rankings, I usually tear somebody to shreds. I usually nitpick, and sure, I wouldn't have ranked them exactly that way. And we presented this on our SEC Media Days show today. And our guy Matthew called in or had a number of super chats in which he was appalled at Texas not being number one. And I think I pretty much put him in his place regarding why Texas should not be number one. But that's my perspective. But I think it's a decent list.
If this is purely on eyeballs, and more so if you're talking about the general population of the United States, the USC is, even with the past decade, is grossly underestimated and should be a top 5. Should be top 5. If you're purely saying just random people on the street asking them, about, name a foot. And it's also very geographic. It depends where, what representation you're talking about. Are you in the South? Are you in the Midwest? Are you in Texas? Who are you asking? But I think if you took USC is, I've been overseas and people have given me a fight on. I've been in Heathrow Airport getting fight on from English people because they know USC. I'm sure they know someone in their family that went there. There's branding, and you go anywhere, you go into New York or people know USC. Listen to our call-in show, Mark. We get people from all over the place that know USC. Yeah. I would find it hard to believe that USC as a brand, when you take out your performance on the field, yeah, this list is not very accurate.
But if you take out Oregon and maybe Georgia, that's a blue blood list. That's difficult to really, 1 through 8. If you take out Georgia and USC and make it a 1 through 8, that's your blue blood list. And it's difficult for me to separate 1 versus 2 versus 3 all the way to 8. I could make an argument for any of them.
Well, I wouldn't have Texas or LSU as a blue blood either, though. Texas, Georgia, Oregon, and LSU to me are not blue bloods. The rest are.
Not Texas.
But that's my definition. I have different definition than you probably have. Texas is.
I think we're only off by 1. I include Texas.
Yeah. So it's a good list. It's a solid list. Eyeballing it from what Justin said, I can't argue it because USC's past performance outside of a couple, 2016, 2017, 2022. What has SC done going all the way back to 2012? It's like on the field performance has been poor. Has been poor by USC or anyone on those list standards. So we have a super chat. We're kind of.
USC football fan, appreciate you being here. Thank you for the contribution. Finebaum is attempting to deter SEC country 5-star recruits from coming to USC. He knows once USC starts winning, they can dominate the sport.
Well, if USC does start winning, it doesn't matter what Paul Finebaum says. So I guess we could just reroute your statement that way. Regardless of what Paul Finebaum wants to say, if USC is winning 10 games a season, it doesn't really matter what Finebaum attempts to do. But I mean, I see your point. I don't know if I just don't think Finebaum actually has it out for USC. Like, there's no personal vendetta, I don't think, towards USC at all. I think he's going for low hanging fruit. I think he's going for what he knows will get the big hits. And there was someone in the chat, might have been Uncle Rico, said something. He's getting exactly what he wants. I don't know. I hope he's getting a lot of like positive push from the people that hate USC. But if you look at that video, I wouldn't watch the video itself, and you see like Heather Denich and some other people's faces when he's talking, like Paul, what the hell are you even talking? You know, look at their expressions on their faces. Anyone that knows football didn't take that seriously, and it's really a hit to your credibility when you talk that stupid. So I don't know if he got what he wanted. If he wanted to hit to his credibility and get a bunch of his name in the news, but in a negative way, I guess it worked. But I think this one kind of backfired on him, to be honest.
So this is just a tip of the iceberg, but this may help some USC fans discredit what Paul Finebaum has to say. Here is prior to the 21 season, Paul Finebaum on Jim Harbaugh. They should fire him now. His scathing takedown of Jim Harbaugh. Bam. There you go. That's how much that's worth.
Yeah.
In terms of Finebaum on Lincoln Riley.
Not that he has a whole lot of credibility to begin with. You know what I'm saying? We could also leave that point there. I did want to talk about, there was a list on the all-time wins pyramid. That was pretty interesting. We could hit that next week as well, because we're definitely getting along into that past the hour right now. But
sounds good. Matt, what's going on at Trojan's Wire?
Well, you know, next week is Big Ten Media Days. So, you know, kind of going to be quiet for one more week, but next week, Big Ten Media Days, like there will be plenty to cover. We're really excited about it. Obviously looking forward, Mark, to what you have to say about Big Ten Media Days and about the conference at large. We're going to be watching your shows here at the Voice of College Football. So, you know, kind of one more week that's going to be relatively quiet for us at Trojan's Wire, and then Big Ten Media Days, like that's going to begin the real ramp up toward the season in August, right around the bend. I know Tim's excited to cover preseason camp. That's going to be fun for him. So, you know, we're almost there. We're almost at the point where we get to start talking about actual football, less about recruiting. Oh, thank goodness.
And if you liked our conversation a couple weeks ago here on this channel, I go into a little bit of information. We go into the running backs, the wide receivers, also the defense. I'm going to have that out pretty soon. Interesting, just some of the things that it didn't really hit right with me. I can't remember what they had for linebackers. We're 30s or 50s, whatever it would have been. But, you know, a lot of people, because he played at Oregon State, don't realize that Easton Mascarenas Arnold was a first-team Pac-12 player with 106 tackles, 11 for loss. You know, PFF rating like near 90. You know, for against the run. So I think that, you know, that I know, again, I'm not discounting the rankings. I'm saying I know this, and that was one of my first questions for if I'm allowed to. I don't got any problems, Mark, but I want to ask. I would say, how, you know, I know that there is a form. This is all formulaic with him. That's why he's so. That's why, you know, Phil Steele's so consistent. Is because he has a formula, a proven formula, and it does play out. But there have to be, you know, just some kinks in the machinery somewhere. And again, some of the numbers that came out, even Achille Arnold, his brother, I mean, the guy's given up one touchdown. I think Rusty came out with this. One touchdown in the past like 2 years off of him playing safety up at Oregon State, you know, with like a coverage rating of like 88 or whatever. So, I mean, I'm not saying that we have, you know, that we're like elite level, the whole elite conversation, but somewhere USC being outside the top 25 in all of those categories was a bit surprising to me, given the caliber of players there. So it'll be a good conversation, but I covered that over on Trojan's Wire in a little more detail if you guys want to go and check that out as well.
So just to wrap up Matt's last point and Tim's point here, Phil Steele, we get him twice. So we'll have him on the national channel. That will be myself and Phil Steele. That'll be released sometime next week. And then the following week, Matt and Tim, Phil Steele on just USC. So be looking out for that video as well. And then to Matt's point, we've got 2 credentials for the Big Ten Media Days. I will not personally be there, but we will be represented here at the Voice of College Football at Big Ten Media Days for a second consecutive season. For Tim, for Matt, of course, you can join them coming up Friday night at 7 Pacific. When you produce the show, give them a call, get your questions ready. You've got 4 days to do it. 7 p.m. Pacific on Friday with Tim and Matt. We will see you then.